Hey, everybody, I want to welcome you to You and the Law podcast. We've got another exciting episode of the podcast show for you today. I am one of the co-hosts of the show, Virgil Green, and the guy on the other end of the screen goes by the name of Chief Swag. How you doing today, brother?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
Man, I'm doing good, man. It's always good to see you, brother.
It's always good to be seen, man. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you this one last time.
What's that?
I am the host.
Okay.
You're gonna get that right once, man. I might have to fire you, man. I'm gonna hold your paycheck.
Well, you know what, man? Go ahead. If you do that, then I want to raise.
All right.
Anything else to say?
No, go right ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, man, we've got a guest who's going to be joining us on the podcast show, and he's somebody that you and I know. So we're going to welcome tonight. Our guest is going to be Reginald Hines, and so let me bring on Mr. Hines to the podcast show.
Thank you all. Thank you all for having me tonight.
Hey, glad to have you on the show with us.
What's going on, Mr. Hines? How you doing? Long time no see.
It's been a while. So how you been doing?
Just busy, man. Just busy trying to change the world.
I hear you.
Hey, Mr. Hines, we want to thank you for taking the time to come out and come on the podcast show and talk to us about what is the National Association of Blacks in Criminal Justice about. And you guys are doing some great things. At one time, I was a member of NABCJ back when I was
yes,
police
you
chief
were.
in Foley.
Yes.
And so that was when Rozier, she was real active with NABCJ. She's still pretty involved with NABCJ?
Yes, she is. Rosia she was our opening session speaker at our conference that we had at Oklahoma City University.
Oh, okay.
And not only is she a part of it, but both of her sons are very active with the organization.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Well, hey, Mr. Hines, why don't you let everybody who's watching us, let everybody know who you are and what your background is and how you are involved with NABCJ.
Okay. My name is Reginald Hines. I'm currently the president of the National Association of Blacks in Criminal Justice, and everyone calls it NABCJ. I'm the president of the Oklahoma chapter, retired from the Oklahoma Department of Corrections after 38 years of working with them. And for some reason, after I retired from them, I worked with juveniles for about 3 years. And
okay.
so I've been a member of the organization for about 25 plus years.
Okay, well, good. Well, and you guys have got a program, or you guys are a part of something that's going on at Douglas High School and as well as Langston. But so kind of let everybody know what's going on with Douglas High School and NABCJ. Because I know it's the first time in the nation something like this has happened at a high school.
Yes, it's the first time that we have a criminal justice chapter at a high school, which is Douglas High School, and we work with Douglas High School because they were called the Law Academy, and so a lot of those students or young people there had an interest in law enforcement. And so we thought it was a good opportunity for us to partner with them and get a NABCJ chapter started at the high school. And so one of the things we wanted to do with the chapter was we wanted to give the students more information about the criminal justice system. We wanted to bring in speakers that could talk to them about what their careers were, and not only people that were working in the criminal justice system. We actually brought in some individuals who had been incarcerated to talk to them about their experience with the system. But we wanted to give the students a broadened experience so they can be prepared to if they wanted to pursue working in the criminal justice system. But another thing we wanted to do was give them information that we thought they could share with the other students and I'll share with their families about things going on in the criminal justice system.
Well, and that's a good program, because obviously when you can get to the youth early and get them to where they understand how the criminal justice system works, how the court system works, how the law enforcement system works.
Right.
Now they have a better understanding of when they do come in contact with a police officer or they find themselves in court. It's not all new to them. And so, especially for kids who come from a community where they don't have the best of relationship with local law enforcement.
And so what we did is we actually started out with bringing in some police officers, and so they could, give them information about what it was like to be a police officer, what their roles and duty was. Then we brought in attorneys. We've had judges come in. So we try to give them the whole spectrum of how the system actually works. We even brought in some legislators to talk about laws and things like that. So we've been trying to give them the whole spectrum of how that system works. And then we brought in offenders who had been incarcerated, so they can tell how the system impacted them. What the system cost them by being incarcerated. And so they gave them information about the difficulties in getting jobs, not being able to vote until a certain period of time. And so they gave all of that information to them.
Okay. So
let me
go ahead. Go ahead, Keith.
So, Mr. Hines, one of the things I'm glad to hear that program when I was in Oklahoma. I mean, you heard about that program. But let me just say this. Thank you for that. And the reason why is because a lot of people, when you say criminal justice, they focus specifically on police. And so what NABCJ is doing and the other African American law enforcement organizations are doing, showing kids there's other areas.
That's correct. Yeah.
Probation, parole, detention, forensics. And so that lets a lot of kids know, because there's just some people that they don't want to be a police officer.
That's correct. Yes.
But when you and the way I always break it down is that there's four. It's like a fork, and it's a 4-pronged fork with the community first, law enforcement, judicial, and then detention. And then kids will say, "Man, I didn't know that. I didn't. Yeah, it's not just about being a police officer." So anyway, thank you for bringing more attention to the criminal justice profession, because that's what we are. We're a profession. Thank you for doing that.
And we tried to tell them that all the components have to work together to get a positive outcome. So we try to tell them how that piece of it works. And we even did something different this year. We brought in a private security company called Tricor. And Tricor is a company that provides security services all over the country. An example of that is the Thunder basketball team. Tricor provides security for the basketball players plus their families. And so, the young people had never thought about something like that. And they even at the golf tournament, they provide security at one time for Tiger Woods and those type of individuals. So we brought that in. We brought in the Fed system, U.S. Marshals. So we try to expose them to all of those different avenues. And then we talk to them about starting their own businesses, such as halfway houses and things like that. So we just try to give them the whole gamut of it.
Right, because the average, when you say security, people think security guard. They don't realize that security is a profession. And so that's good. That is so. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, because even at the Thunder games, the camera system is so large there. They have people that their job is to sit and watch the cameras, and so we try to give them all of that exposure. And then also we also talk about some difficult things. We talk about the George Floyd incident, and we talk about the disparity in sentencing. So we try to give them all of that information that goes on with criminal justice.
So from a student standpoint, what kind of reaction have you gotten from the students who are part of this program?
Well, at first they were kind of standoffish because they had a different opinion of law of criminal justice, and as the chief was saying, they thought criminal justice all it consisted of was the police officers, and a lot of things they got from social media. And so we know a lot of times social media doesn't portray the truth on everything. They just take one part and the negative part of it and they make it into something that is really not. And so we talk about that not all police officers are bad people. We said, that's just like any business. You're going to have some people in any business that don't follow the procedures and those type of things. And we try to tell them that the procedures that most law enforcement has does not condone what happened to George Floyd. And so we try to tell them that, and that not all police officers are bad people and they're out to catch you doing something wrong so they can, convict you and all of those things. So we try to have those type of conversation, and we try to tell them that the more of you all that get involved in it, then the better off the community will be. So we have those difficult conversations with them. And the Julius Jones incident was another big discussion that we had with them, and we talked about that process, and we talked about the pardon and parole board. So we try to give them all of that particular information. But one thing we try to tell them is don't let social media make the decisions for you. Do your own research. Yes.
Yeah. So, and you brought up about what took place, with the Julius Jones case, which has got a lot of local and national attention, and so many questions still surround his innocent or his guilt or not being, guilty or not being guilty. How did the students feel about, especially that part of the criminal justice system where a person goes to court and what we've seen is that people oftentimes are wrongfully convicted. So at their age, what kind of feedback do you get back from the students in reference to something like the Julius Jones?
Well, once we got past the social media part, because a lot of them had decided just based on what social media had put out there, and of course they said he was a black man that that got wrongly accused and all of that. And so I told them, we talked about, let's just look at the facts, the facts that you have, and see what happens. So once we got into the facts, and I asked them to do their own research on it. And come back with their own research and their own opinions, and let's have an intelligent discussion on it, because 50%, and mostly it was at Langston, 50% of the students in the class thought he was guilty, and the other 50% said he wasn't. And so we said, let's have an intelligent discussion on this case, and based on your research, not what social media is leading you to believe on it. And so at the end of it, after we started getting into it, I think what they decided was, the majority was, that they didn't think that he had received a fair trial on what happened. And they thought that every avenue should be tried before you put somebody to death, because they said once somebody is put to death, there's no coming back from that.
Yeah.
And so,
go ahead.
But they did think that he had some involvement, but they just couldn't say how, come up with how much involvement. But they just thought that there was enough evidence for him to get another trial.
Okay. Well, hey,
you got them thinking analytically. They're thinking.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thinking. I like that.
Well, hey, we want to welcome a NABCJ member from Compton, California, Mr. Isaac Esberry.
Oh yes, I don't know him personally, but we sat on a task force together for NABCJ, and because of COVID, we had to do everything by Zoom meetings. So I've met Mr. Ashbury through the Zoom meetings.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, we want to thank you for tuning in.
Hey, Mr. Hines, Renee Smith.
Yes.
Renee Smith from Fort Worth said hello.
Okay, she was a part of that task force with us, and that was a very good task force. A very good product came out of that task force that I was able to use here in Oklahoma City because I was on the task force here in Oklahoma City. So because of the work we were doing with NABCJ, it enabled me to ask some real good questions about things that were going on here.
I've been knowing Renee for 32 years.
Yes.
So Mr. Hines, tell us about this project that you worked on that Chief Humphrey just mentioned. You've got somebody in Fort Worth, Renee. What was that about? How was NABCJ involved with that?
Well, we were tasked with looking at what was happening with law enforcement around the country in regards to relationships with the Black community and the treatment of people in the Black community through law enforcement. So we were given a task to look at that and to produce what I would call a white paper that we were going to share with the Congressional Black Caucus and some other people around the country with what we came out of. And we were fortunate that we had quite a few law enforcement people on that task force with us.
Okay. You got anything, Chief Humphrey? Oh, I think we. Oh, okay.
Miss Hyde, I'll tell you, I did some adjunct work at Langston, and one of the things you find is when you go into a classroom in predominantly African American, and first question I would ask, okay, how many people hate the police? And you would get the majority of the class would raise their hands. Very few that would not, so the majority would. And then you would start kind of breaking it down to why do you hate the police? And then you had a small percentage of those individuals, they basically hated, well, you ask who's had an encounter with police? And then you have a small percentage that have had direct encounters with law enforcement. But the majority of the class had, what they knew about law enforcement was third and fourth hand. And so they based their opinions on law enforcement based on what their cousins said. And so, with the program like you all have at the high school, that gets the kids to thinking more about, maybe I do need to ask more questions. If somebody said, well, I was just stopped, the police just stopped me for nothing. Well, wait a minute. Was your tail light out? Was your license plate light out? Did you have your registration? You start asking those questions, and then you're able to get a better feel of your rights. And that's what happened. A lot of us don't know our rights.
That's correct. Yes.
They don't know. We don't know the laws. We don't know our rights. And so a program like this gets those kids to thinking more about, well, let me ask that question. Okay, well, let me ask this. Okay. So we need more of those programs in school. We don't have civics a lot. Let me say this. I noticed in Oklahoma, there are some schools that have civic programs, but there's a lot of schools that don't have civic programs that help kids understand local government. And so, I think that's where we're missing it. So that's my part. That's my part of that. Virgil don't like me talking. So Virgil, you go right.
Hey, as you see, Mr. Hines, he runs the show. So, or he think he runs the show.
I'm seeing that. One of the things we did discuss is that in Oklahoma we have a high incarceration rate. At one time we were in females we were number one for 25, 30 years, and in males we were like number 2, 3, or 4. It just depended on what Mississippi and Louisiana were doing at one particular time. And so the minority blacks in Oklahoma probably make up about 8% of the entire state population. And so we would discuss why we only make up 8%, but the people that were incarcerated was about close to 35-38%. And so we would have that discussion, why was that happening, with so many of us being incarcerated in this state. And so there was some interesting dialogue with the students on why that was happening and what could be done to prevent that. And so we even got into a discussion that most of the prisons are in rural areas, but most of the people that make up that population come from the urban areas.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we got into a discussion about that. Is that for economic reasons or what? So it's just challenging the students to look at those type of things, and not only to look at them, but we challenge them to talk to their politicians about those, because those are the people that make up the laws that the law enforcement and criminal justice has to enforce. So we challenge them to look at those kind of things, and don't just allow politicians to come to the school just for a photo op. When they come, be prepared to ask them some questions. What is your stance on this? Or why is this happening? Or why did you support this law? And so we're challenging them to do those type of things.
So I know there's a very small Black caucus here in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of the Black caucus, has any other legislators from the other party taken the time to come in to speak to these young men and women, to get their input? Because I think it's really important for people who don't look like us to hear what young people have to say, especially in Oklahoma. When you talk about, police reform, there hasn't been a lot done with police reform.
Right.
Over the last couple of years, you've seen the incarceration rate of women coming down. So is that something that you guys are working on, especially with policymakers, and hearing from a generation of kids that they may not even know anything about?
Yeah. Now we have had good success with the new sheriff coming and talk. He actually came into Douglas and talked to the students in a forum, and we just did our state conference, and he came to the state conference and presented at the state conference. And as we all know, he's a Republican, and that's kind of unique in Oklahoma. We don't have a lot of Black Republicans, but he took the time out, and I thought he was very honest in his answers. You might not always agree with what he said, but I thought he was honest and he was visible. We have been working with the cabinet secretary, Tricia Evers. She actually joined NABCJ. We convinced her to come to one of our conferences, and she enjoyed it so much. She paid her dues, and she just didn't pay dues to be paying dues. She's active. She comes to everything that we have, and she listens to the students, and she tries to give an explanation for things. But those are two new people, and like I say, Trish Evers, she's a Republican. Yeah. But she's the cabinet secretary over all the public safety. And so we've been fortunate enough to have her to be involved in it. Now, we have invited some other people to come, and they have turned us down. Sure. We've invited the governor to come and be a part, and he turned us down.
Imagine that. I know that's hard.
So it's not from a lack of us trying to get them to come so we can talk to them about. I try to get some information from them about why they do certain things, or why certain laws have passed. But those two individuals have been are very good at responding and talking with the young people about what's going on and why they're doing things. And as I said earlier, we want the young people to be prepared when they come, that they can ask questions and not just get people we know doing when it's election time, everybody will
No,
come
everybody
and
wants to come out. Yeah.
and do photo ops. But we said don't take that as when they come. That's an opportunity for you to get information from them on their stance on different things. And so what we're hoping with these young people is that they'll go back and share that with other young people, and they also will go back and share it with their families on different things and dispel a lot of rumors. And when we started this tool, we were hoping that we could produce some prevention with this, that the more they understand the criminal justice system, that it will keep them away from being involved in the criminal justice system on the negative side, but be on the positive.
Okay. Okay. Well, hey, I
And
want
they
to remind
challenge
her.
me sometimes on my thought process on some things. So
Well, that's
so
good.
that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I want to remind everybody, if you're just now tuning in, you're listening to You and the Law podcast show, and tonight's guest is Reginald Hines. He's the president of the Oklahoma chapter of NABCJ. And for people who don't know what NABCJ is about, kind of give a little background about NABCJ
Okay.
and how did it come about?
Well, NABCJ actually was started in 1974, I believe, in Ohio. And it's a national organization. There are chapters all over the country. But it was started to because of the concern of not having enough blacks working in the criminal justice system, but also to look at the different laws and things that were being passed that impacted our community. So it was started because of that, and also it was started to help us get training. I mean, we were working in the field, but a lot of times we were not getting. To me, we were not getting proper training on things that were going on. And the first NABCJ conference I went to was in Houston, and there were over 900 people there. And I mean, it just floored me because I saw 900 people that looked like me. And these were people that were commissioner, judges, they were wardens, deputy wardens. And I was like, you mean uh, we are holding those positions? And then we got to go. And the biggest thing I saw was the networking that was going on. So I could pick up the phone and call somebody in St. Louis and say, hey, this issue is going on. Can you give me some directions on what to do about this? And also, it just gave me a sounding board to talk to other people what was going on. And there were organizations in Oklahoma, but those organizations did not give me the opportunity that NABCJ gave me. One of the things when went to NABCJ, we got to do assessments, and one of the things that I was deficient in was public speaking. And so NABCJ gave me an opportunity to do public speaking. They pushed me out there and said the only way you're gonna get better at it is that you get out there and do it, and somebody critiques you honestly. And so you got mentors and that, and so that's what we're trying to do is to give mentors and do things like that with the organization. And it's just not local, but it's a national organization around the country, and it's just not made up of people from corrections, but it's people of all avenues in the field of criminal justice.
Okay. Well, I know when I was first told about NABCJ when I was a police chief in Boley, and of course, the John Lilly Correctional facility there is there, and trying to think who was the deputy warden at the time. She was heavily involved with NABCJ, and I think that's how I became a member, because I was also the chapter president with Noble. And so everybody kind of got, when you say NABCJ, then you say Noble, a lot of people would get confused. Well, what's the difference?
Yes.
Well, two separate organizations, with both of them do a lot of great work in the community. So, so Mr. Hines, when the students hear about things that's going on, say within like the George Floyd incident, what are their thoughts about how, especially this side of the criminal justice system, the policing side of it, Uh, what kind of feedback do you get from them when if officers come in and talk to these students about, hey, this is how things work, but things may have happened like what took place up in Minneapolis, Minnesota with George Floyd?
Yeah, and one of the things that when we did the task force, I had never thought about how Black police officers sometimes were ostracized in working in law enforcement. And so I really applaud you two gentlemen on how you all were able to navigate and get to the positions that you all are in. And so when they see that, it really, and I had the same feelings. I was angry. It even brought tears to my eyes when I saw a grown man, calling for his mother, and they continued to apply pressure to his neck, and it just brought back a lot of bad memories for me. And so the students, when they saw that, it brought back all the things they thought about as far as discrimination and those type of things, and a lot of anger was in them. And so with that anger, they were saying all police officers are bad, and so that's when you have to try to talk to them and say not all police officers fit that criteria or would do something that here's what the things that social media was putting out there, and the anger from those young people, you could feel it at that time. So you really had to be careful in talking to them, because you didn't want to lose their respect for them to say, okay, here's Mr. Hines. He's one of them, he's agreeing with what they did and stuff. So you had to be careful in talking to them and let them express that anger as to why they were angry and upset about that incident, which I told them I completely agree. I was angry and upset myself about that particular incident. I said, and not only that, but they knew they were being recorded, and they didn't seem to let that bother them. And so,
and
just talking through that.
Yeah, because you had the situation with George Floyd, and then right after that, you had another incident that took place in another suburb city in Minneapolis with the other young man who was killed by a police officer who thought she was reaching for her taser, but she reached for a gun. And then there was another incident up in St. Paul, and so
and we had one in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where
exactly. Yeah, and what was it? I think his last name is Crutchell.
Yes.
Terrence
Crutchell.
Terrence Crutchell.
Yes. Crutchell. Yeah, Terrence Crutchell.
And his family has been actively involved since his death. And I think they started a foundation in his name, and so that's a good thing. A tragic incident took place, but that family turned something tragic into something positive, to where his name is going to be remembered forever. Yes.
And one of the things that on the task force in Oklahoma City that we really looked at was training, but we even looked at hiring practices and the whole piece of it, and to give some recommendations to the mayor and to the city council. And that's where I talk to students. We got to get more young people involved in it. We looked at the racial makeup of the police department, and not just blacks and white, but we looked at females, Hispanics, Native Americans. I think all of those individuals need to be inclusive of a police department, because that represents Oklahoma City. And until we start getting that type of representation, then people are going to look at it in a different manner. So and that's why you two gentlemen are so important. When young people see the two of you all, they say, oh, them two, I can become that, because those two are able to do that. And so that's what we talked about there. We talked about mental health for the officers, because they are under a lot of stress every day when they go out into the streets. And And so that has to impact them mentally too. So we looked into what type of can they get some relief or mental health relief when they
Assist.
need it. So we looked assistance. So we looked at all of those type of things.
So go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mr. Hines, one of the things that I think that NABCJ is kind of underrated, and what I mean by that, we know about Noble, we know about
Right.
BPOA, but I think a lot of times we forget about NABCJ. And when you said that NABCJ was founded in the early 70s, 73, 74,
right.
That's when BPOA and Noble were also, because what we saw is we didn't have a lot of people that looked like us in law enforcement, in those upper administrative positions or even supervisor positions. But can you just imagine if you didn't have those organizations, what law enforcement would look at, and how you would not have people who look like us in these professions? And so I want anyone who's, to the listeners, we are products of these organizations.
Exactly. Yeah.
We are products of these organizations that I'm like Mr. Hines.
Yeah.
I sent a couple of my officers to a Noble conference, and they came back and they were like, "Chief, man, I didn't realize they had so many African Americans in charge of Secret Service and DEA, ATF, probation and parole and state troopers and stuff." So, we got to continue to support these organizations if we're going to continue to grow in this profession.
Well, and that's where the young people come in at.
Yeah,
we got to get the next group ready.
Yeah, well, it's really important that the young, especially in the African American community, because getting into law enforcement, becoming a police officer, is not something that a lot of young men and women want to do because maybe just they've had a bad experience, or there's just not a field they want to get into. And so that's why we're seeing such a decline in recruiting.
Yes.
And so kind of talk a little bit about the Langston, what NABCJ is doing up at Langston, because I know now you're dealing with college students. How are they, what type of interaction do they have with NABCJ, especially on a college level?
Well, the good thing about that, and it's not just the Langston, and that's why I'm so proud of NABCJ, is that they have student chapters all over the country. But in Langston, we've been able to help quite a few of those students get employed by doing job fairs and things like that. We and not only have they've diversified, they went to the Department of Corrections. We have some that work for the Oklahoma City PD Department, Tulsa PD. We have some that have went into working at halfway houses, and just recently we did a virtual deal for we call it From Langston to Law School, and so we brought in a bunch. We got with the Black Lawyers Association, and they helped us put this on, and they were able to bring in HRs from the human resources people from OU, Tulsa, OCU, Oklahoma City University, and they explained to the students the process of getting into law school. And because of that, 3 students are now from Langston are in law school. And so that's what we should be all about is getting these students prepared to go into the various areas of law. And when Chief, when you were at Norman, I remember you gave out some interns for some of the students down there, and so we got to get that connection again to get those internships started again down there with the Norman PD. So just exposing them to those type of things really gets them involved in getting them employed and stuff.
Yeah,
and just we have even went as far as California, because NABCJ is a chapter in California. We had some students that were going there, so we were able to put them in contact with some people to get employment there.
Okay. Because
hey, Virgil,
you know,
Virgil, we're gonna get Mr. Hines in touch with Ricky Jackson.
yeah,
Okay.
We'll get you
Yeah.
in contact
Okay.
with Ricky Jackson.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And you know, you mentioned California, you know, especially at Langston, you've got students who are coming from California, they're coming from Detroit, Chicago. So
Mhm.
they come to Langston, uh, and you know, for people who are listening who are not familiar with Langston, it's the only HBCU university in
Uh-huh.
Oklahoma, and so
Well, it's the only HBCU in the Midwest
Yes.
or West Coast.
well,
Right.
yeah, you're right,
Yeah,
because there's nothing. I
there's
mean,
nothing on the
Arizona,
West Coast. There's nothing on the West Coast. Nothing else.
yeah,
So
Right.
Midwest is as far as HBCUs. Well, it's the only one. It's the only one.
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. So, and you know, and I want to remind everybody, if you're just now tuning in, you're listening to You and the Law podcast show. And tonight, our guest is Reginald Hines, who is the president of the Oklahoma chapter of NABCJ. And if you miss any part of this live broadcast, you can go to Spotify and download the Spotify app, yeah, or you can download Google Podcasts or many other podcasts, and you'll find You and the Law. And this broadcast will be uploaded to those platforms. So. And also, once you go to our Facebook page and like our Facebook page and follow us at You and the Law 1 on Facebook, and you can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter as well. And so, Mr. Hines, we've got somebody who just came on and said that there is I want to say Lester Young. There is one in Texas. So I believe you must be saying that there is a HBCU in Texas.
Oh, Texas has quite a few HBCUs.
Yeah, they do.
You might be talking about a chapter because man, there's multiple HBCUs. Man, you got
and Texas has quite a few student chapters in Texas. Yes, they're well represented.
Yeah.
And one thing we do too is we give out scholarships. We try to give out scholarships twice a year to the students to help alleviate some of the financial burdens that they have. But they have to be a member of the student chapter. And the scholarship is named after Ted Logan, who was the first African-American warden in the state of Oklahoma. And he's also one of the founding members of our chapter. So we give out that scholarship, and we try to educate the students about Ted Logan, Jerome Dickens, who was, that's been kind of debatable, but we claim him as being the first U.S. Marshal, a black U.S. Marshal in the state of Oklahoma. And Joyce Jackson, who was the first of many things, but she was one of the first blacks to have her own news anchor. She was the first black news anchor in the state of Oklahoma. So the scholarship is named after those three individuals. Mr. Dickens and Mr. Logan are deceased, but their families still participate in that scholarship.
Yeah, I know when I was a police chief in Boley, Mr. Logan, he was very involved.
He's from Boley.
Yeah, he's from Boley. He's a Boley man. So had the honor of meeting him back in the early 2000s when I was the chief in Boley. So, is there for the young people, when, you guys had your conference here, is there where when you guys have a national conference, is there something for the young people to attend at that national conference as well?
Yes, and that's a good thing that the national conference, they have workshops just set up for the students. But the students are also encouraged to attend all of the workshops, but they have activities and things set up just for the students. The Nationals has a student representative who actually is on the national board, and that person represents the all of the student chapters. And so the Nationals is really involved with trying to promote the students or get them involved in activities that's going on. And they have a student forum at the Nationals. Not only do they do that, but the student chapters, they meet once a month and they discuss things that are just pertinent to what's going on with the students
Okay.
around the country. And I think that's a good thing that they can discuss. All of the chapters, student chapters, come together and they can discuss among themselves things that are going on around the country.
Well, and that's good because there's so many different things going on with in the police side of it, the criminal justice side of it, and to have young people engaged and a part of that is real
Yes.
important
Yes.
because, as you stated, these are going to be future police officers,
Mhm.
future lawyers. They're going to be working in the Department of Corrections or even security, because
Yes.
you know a lot of times people think being working in security is not very glamorous, but
Mhm.
just like you said, Tricord, they provide
Yep.
security service for the Thunder. So you're
Mhm.
able to network with some people that you normally wouldn't be able to network with.
That's
And that's real important. So
yes.
on a local level, how much participation but do you get from OCPD or any other area law enforcement agencies? Besides, I know you mentioned that the sheriff department the sheriff came in and talked to the
Mhm.
students, because again, when you talk about minorities in policing or in the criminal justice system, you don't see a lot of us. And,
Right,
and
that's true.
so,
Yeah.
and especially in women, you don't see a lot of women
Mhm.
police officers or even women in the Department of Corrections.
Mhm. Uh, we have they participate in the job fairs at Langston. They go out and they talk to the students, and they're trying to recruit because, as you said earlier, all law enforcement at this particular time, they're really needing some people. They are, everyone I talk to, they are short staffed. Oklahoma City PD is short staffed. Even where we did our conference at Oklahoma City University, their chief came up and talked, and he talked about being short staffed. The
Mm-hmm.
Department of Corrections is short staffed. So
Mm-hmm.
everyone is short staffed. The director from the Department of Corrections spoke, and he said this is not an employer's market anymore; it's an employee market. So
Yeah.
he uh, he he did a pitch to the students himself to try to get them to consider working for the Department of Correction, and they have had one of the biggest pay raises for the correctional officers. Correctional officers now are starting out at over $40,000, and that's unheard of with Oklahoma. So, so
Wow.
he's doing that to try to be competitive. The county sheriff's department was there recruiting these young people. So
Okay.
and so we had this. So I'm just waiting to see how many of them that they actually hire, and how
Actually
many of
hard.
them, yeah, and how
What?
many
Yeah.
of them actually stay in there,
Yeah.
stay with those different agencies.
Yeah. Hey, we got a comment from Kelly O'Brien who said OCPD
Oh
hosted our
yeah,
student
yeah.
chapter today.
Kelly is
So,
the she's the student advisor for Langston.
oh, is she? Okay. All right. Well,
Yes,
Kelly.
yes, she does a heck of a job with those young people down there.
Okay, good. Well, Kelly, thank you for tuning in and to you and the Law Podcast Show. In the fact, she said that OCPD hosted our student chapter today. So did court services. So you had
Okay.
law enforcement as well as the court services there. Yeah.
Yeah, we couldn't do anything in Langston without Kelly, so
Well, that's
we really
great. Great.
appreciate her down there. Yes.
Great. Okay. And so Mr. Hines, and I'm trying to remember her name, and you probably remember she was a deputy warden down in Boley at John Lilly Correctional Facility. It's been some years ago, but I know she was
Uh-huh.
involved. I don't know if she's still involved with NABCJ,
Mhm.
but she was one of there's not been that many Black females who have served in that capacity as a deputy warden with the Department of Corrections.
Yeah, it wasn't Lenore Hudson, was it? Or
No, no, it wasn't Lenora Hudson.
Denise Spears?
No, that doesn't.
That doesn't ring a name.
No,
Okay.
Rita
Rita
Cookson.
Cookson.
Rita Cookson.
Rita
Somebody,
Cookson,
yeah.
I see Leroy put that up there.
Yeah, yeah,
Rita
yeah.
she's still heavily involved with the organization. As a matter of fact, she's the vice president. So of the
Oh, is she?
organization.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
Yes,
not
and she's still doing work.
that's not Miss Maxwell, is it?
No.
No, Miss
Okay.
Maxwell was Miss Maxwell used to be heavily involved with
Okay.
with the organization. Miss Maxwell was one of the first, if not the first, she was one of the first Black female deputy wardens, and she was the only Black female deputy warden at OSP at one time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she has a tremendous history with the organization.
Well, her family they're deep rooted in law enforcement. Her son is former Secret Service agent.
Yes.
And her
Special
daughter
agent in charge. Special agent in charge.
special agent. Yeah.
And-
Correct me.
And
Yeah.
best part about it, a man of Phi Beta Sigma. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay, and he was a member of NABCJ, and he has came and spoke to the organization, and did some recruitment and gave his testimony.
Well, good. Yeah, and now her daughter is she's over the Oklahoma Democratic Party, and so so they are, and she's still active. She has an organization that she runs that does I think DUI assessment. So
yes, she does.
So yeah, so I know her pretty well. Kelly just put up something we're going to put up on the screen. She said, "Here's the OKCFox.com article that you might like." So there is an article, a news article that was done today by Fox 25 here in Oklahoma City. So if you check out that, and so we got another message that Mr. Young put up. Rita Maxwell was a warden at Just Done.
Yes, she was.
Yeah. So okay. Good.
Who's the new director over the of the prison system now?
It's Mr. Scott Crow, and he is he's a member of the organization, and he came to the state conference, and he actually spoke at the state conference, and he sent approximately 120 of his staff to the conference.
Good. Wow. So you guys' conference was at Oklahoma City University?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And so they've got a good law program there. And we've had on Keith, I'm trying to remember who we had on. We've had on a couple of times. She is real involved with the students there at the university. Her name will probably come to me by the time we end the show, but
that was good chief there. Isn't that where Dexter Nelson is the chief?
Yeah, Dexter.
Yeah, Dexter actually came and spoke at the conference for us. He was saying he was short-staffed.
That's a good dude. That's a good dude.
Yes. And Dexter and I was actually on the mayor's task force for law enforcement together. That's where I met Dexter at.
Good.
You know what, Virgil? Brother Hines don't give himself a lot of credit. He's very humble, man. He, and I'm being serious, man.
He's been around a long time.
Yes.
He has mentored a lot of young professionals in that in the criminal justice, and especially in the corrections in the corrections area. So, Brother Hines, I just had to get that out there, man. I'm gonna give you.
Oh well, thank you, Chief Humphreys, and Chief Humphreys. He's came and spoke at our conference several times.
I enjoyed
one of our biggest members is Mr. Eric Franklin.
I was gonna say, how's Eric doing?
Friends.
How's he doing?
He's good. He's doing great. He's enjoying retirement and doing a lot of fishing. But him and his wife are big supporters of the organization.
But good.
He's a good dude. Yeah, he's a real good dude.
Yes.
Shirley, yeah, they're good.
Shirley sung the national anthem for us.
Oh yes, and Lester Young said it that Hines is a moving shaker all across the nation, and he's not joking.
I told him I'm getting old now. I can't move as fast as I used to.
Well, I tell you what, we're coming up on the last few minutes of the show, and Mr. Hines, we definitely want to thank you for taking the time to come on and talk to our listeners about NABCJ, because I think it's really important that, you know, we use our platform to let people know about organizations such as NABCJ, such as Noble, and many other Black organizations that do a lot in the communities, but oftentimes people don't really know a lot about them unless you're associated with them. But I think it's really important that our young kids know that there are minority organizations that are there to help mentor them and lead them in a path where they're, you know, if they don't want to become a police officer, maybe one day they become a warden, you know. So there's many other opportunities out there. So
and I really want to say I appreciate you two gentlemen for all you've done and accomplished over the years. You all have set the bar and have, you know, you talked about Chief Nelson. You know, without you two, it wouldn't be no Chief Nelson. So you two have really set the mark and done a lot of things. And you talk about mentoring, but you all have actually done that. And I can't even imagine what the obstacles that you all have faced in you all's career and to get to where you're at.
Well, and sometimes you're still facing those obstacles.
Yeah, brother Hines, you know what? I appreciate that. But what I will tell you is that in listening to you and Virgil and I know of myself, we've never forgotten where we came from and those who helped us.
That's true. Yes.
Reach back and grab somebody, pull them up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and that's why I think it's real important that the young Black men and women who are in law enforcement or who are in corrections, that they take that time to really engage with students, whether it be at Douglas or any other high school, or even in a middle school, because I think it's really important. And sometimes we even have our own Black officers who are pretty standoffish, who don't want to engage with students, and that's why some students have a negative attitude toward police officers, even Black police officers. So sometimes you see more, I hate to say this, but sometimes you see more white police officers engaged with Black students than you do our own. And so if that may hit a nerve to somebody who's listening now or who may listen to this show in the future, do your part, because somebody helped you get to where you're at.
That is true. That is outstanding.
Because you know, we can go back and talk about how Black police officers back in the 60s and 70s couldn't even arrest a person here in Oklahoma City. They couldn't even go into the main headquarters of the Oklahoma City Police Department. So
and we need to stop being afraid to discuss. We need to stand up proud for organizations like NABCJ. Of course I'm a member of NABCJ. Of course I'm a member of man. Let me tell you this. Man, listen, 34 years. I am proud to say I'm an African American police officer involved in the criminal justice system that have made some changes and done some things. But I still say, if it wasn't for organizations like NABCJ, Noble, Organization, man, we would. There's a strong possibility and maybe even a probability we wouldn't be where we are.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, and NABCJ and Noble has partnered together and done a national conference.
That would be good to do another one. That would be amazing.
Exactly. And I'll mention that to our president, but we have the two organizations have done one together.
Yeah. Well, hey guys, that the music is on. It's that time of the hour.
That was rude, Virgil.
An hour goes by quick.
Yes. That was rude, Virgil.
Yes.
That was rude.
Wait, hey, that just came on automatically. Hey, you see what I got to deal with every day? This is what I got to deal with. Hey, Mr. Hines, we want to thank you for taking the time to come on and be with us, and we're going to definitely get you back on again and get some other people that's involved with NABCJ.
I appreciate you all giving me this opportunity too. I really appreciate it.
All right, anytime, sir. You definitely will be a guest with us again. And Kelly, we want to thank you for listening to the show, and Mr. Young and everybody else. But if you missed any parts of this show tonight, go to Spotify and Anchor and Google Podcasts and download those apps and find You and the Law and follow us and subscribe to the podcast show. But we'll be back again next Thursday at 7:30 for another episode of You and the Law Podcast Show.
Thank you. I'll have a good night.
Hey, you too.
You too, sir. Thank you.
Okay.